What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. March is over, which means it's time for another monthly wrap-up where I rank all the new releases that I saw from worst to best. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your favorite movies in March were, as well as your least favorite. As always, this is just my list, not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. Some of these I'm going to be a little quicker about than others, as I saw 32 new releases this month. 32. Don't let anyone ever say there haven't been many movies getting released. Some of these were films released earlier than March, but I just didn't get around to seeing them until now, and that's going to be the case with these lists, as I can't get to every single movie at the exact moment they're out, but I still want to include them for whatever month I do see them, just to talk about them briefly. But let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about them. In last place is Cosmic Sin, my new frontrunner for worst movie of the year. It is astonishing just how terrible this is. It's not even that the premise itself is bad, it's just that it's so incomprehensible. All of the dialogue is vague and unclear and establishes no character relationships whatsoever. And it's impossible to follow, with characters contradicting themselves left and right. And you can't even enjoy our two top-billed actors, Frank Grillo and Bruce Willis, because Grillo is seen so sporadically and his connection to the plot is never made clear, so you're confused whenever he does randomly pop up. And then Bruce Willis gives what's quite possibly the most disinterested performance I've ever seen. Ever. Like, he doesn't even try hiding how he doesn't care here. It's actually somewhat hilarious to watch. You might enjoy this on a so bad it's good level, but that's about it. At number 31 is Dog Washers, a dark comedy on Netflix that actually has next to nothing to do with dogs. There's one character who's an actual dog washer, but he's pretty disposable. It tries to be something in the vein of Guy Ritchie's early films, but it has none of the personality that made Guy Ritchie's films work so well. It's honestly just an unfunny, incoherent mess with unlikable characters and a plot that will leave you confused by the end of it. You're not entirely sure what the point winds up being, and you get no emotional satisfaction from it whatsoever. The more I think about it, the more I really don't like it, and it's honestly a truly unpleasant movie. At number 30 is Coming to America. This might just be the biggest disappointment on this list. I had such high hopes for it. I knew that comedy sequels released so many years later don't always work so well, but I figured with Craig Brewer coming in to direct, the writers of The Nutty Professor were on board, the entire original cast, down to some of the most random side characters were all back, I figured this had to have been at least good. And it's just a mess. We get about 6 or 7 tonally inconsistent subplots, half of which involve new characters who we only get to know for like one scene each before they just get thrown into all this chaos. And then in between this, the way they incorporate most of the older characters felt forced, and felt more like they were just trying to rely on your nostalgia of the first film to make it through the end. But even that's a stretch, as a lot of the characters will have those same mannerisms that they had so many years ago, but this time, nothing funny is being said. At number 29 is Silk Road, which was a February holdover. This is one of those movies that thinks of itself as way more philosophical than it actually is. It makes a lot of these seemingly bold, pseudo-intellectual statements that, when you think about them for more than 5 seconds, you realize have no actual substance, and really do nothing to bolster any of the character development or the story, both of which are pretty one-note. It tries to be this Social Network knockoff, where it acts like it's making a bold statement, but it's only somewhat intriguing if you have no clue what the actual Silk Road website was. Other than that, there's nothing at all interesting about this. At number 28 is Cherry, a movie that didn't grab me to begin with, and upon watching it, it just confirmed everything that I felt would be wrong about it. I know a lot of people were hyped about this one because it's the Russo brothers directing it, and Tom Holland is also in it, but while Tom Holland gives it his all here, this didn't play to his strengths whatsoever. Holland trying to come off like a cold, heartless, macho sort of guy isn't a role that fits him well. Maybe if the screenplay was stronger and didn't value style over substance, possibly I would have felt differently. But I had a hard time seeing past him, and I found the screenplay weak, so I thought this was a pretty underwhelming film. Number 27 is Breaking News in Yuba County. This is one of those films that should have been way better than it was. I was really hoping I'd enjoy it more, as it has an excellent cast. And it got ripped apart by critics, and while I don't think it's as bad as they said it was, it's still not all that great. The film's ultimate issue is tone, going from a Coen Brothers like dark comedy to doing broad, ridiculous things that feel like something from the early 2000s. While it's funny at times, with the cast really trying, it stretches your suspension of disbelief way too much, and it doesn't make some of the conflict all that convincing. Number 26 is Happily, another movie that I was really hoping I'd enjoy a lot more than I ultimately did. It's a film that starts off with a lot of promise, as it has a great setup, some fun performances, and a nice mix of dark comedy and surrealist mystery. For the first half, I loved it, but the second half really kills a lot of the momentum that's built up. It's often too cryptic for its own good, and a number of scenes felt very disjointed, on top of having a few supporting characters who go essentially to waste, despite always being present throughout the film. You had a great cast here, but unfortunately, this just does not stick the landing, and it wound up being a disappointment for me. And number 25 is Yes Day, a family comedy that, in a way, was what I expected it to be. It's a safe, generic, predictable film with a lot of its jokes centered around things like poop jokes and people falling down, while only having a handful of actual clever moments. But there's surprisingly more heart to this than I anticipated, and whenever it tapped into its sweeter side, there was a sincerity to it that I can appreciate. But that being said, it's still only something that kids will fully enjoy, for all the reasons I just stated. While its heart is in the right place, anyone who isn't a little kid won't get much out of this one, unless you're someone with kids and you want a movie to watch together as a family. At number 24 is Dear Comrades, and these next few I thought were at least pretty decent. This is a Russian historical drama brought to us by the Tango and Cash director, though this is nothing like an 80s action comedy, I can assure you there. This only popped up on my radar because it made the Oscar shortlist for Best International Feature. It ultimately didn't get nominated, but then I heard that Neon distributed it, so I knew I still had to check it out, since their films are usually pretty on point. I found this to be beautifully filmed and well acted, but it's also a very quiet, reserved film that doesn't always have these huge emotional peaks, and your enjoyment of the film is going to boil down to what you're looking for in a movie. I think those who like slower, methodical dramas may appreciate this more, and I thought it was fine, but it's nothing I'd see myself revisiting, to be honest. At number 23 is Son, a horror film that involves demons, cults, and moments of extremely bloody violence. I found the film to be okay. It's certainly directed well, getting the right atmosphere down, but it's a film that's intriguing more for its mystery rather than its characters. A lot of the suspense comes from the mystery of if our main character is possibly being followed by this cult, or if she's possibly imagining everything, and it leads to twists and turns that, while enjoyable enough, don't make the film all that strong after the initial watch in my view. But it's decent enough that you may enjoy it somewhat. At number 22 is Come True, a horror movie involving dreams that I can assure you is not a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff. This is more of a moody, atmospheric, slow-burning film that's pretty solid on a technical level, with some stunning direction by Anthony Scott Burns, as well as an eerie, synth-heavy score, and many of the frightening images and unnerving settings will send chills down your spine. Though the story tends to be a little too vague and doesn't make things like character motivations abundantly clear, so you're not entirely sure what the end goal is supposed to be, and it may leave you confused by the end. I was a little disappointed here, but I at least think there's a lot to appreciate on a technical level and from an acting standpoint. At number 21 is Land, Robin Wright's debut as a director, and it's a film that certainly looks nice, with some shots here that are absolutely gorgeous, and I think Wright has a good eye as a director, though while the performances from herself and Damian Bashir are also good, the story's just not always the most engaging. It doesn't even do anything particularly terrible, it's just so reserved and passive that it goes on for stretches without getting to the point sometimes. I'm all for spending time with characters to get a feel for them, but there still needs to be purpose, and I didn't always get that here. So I think it's fine overall. You won't dislike watching it, but it doesn't stick with you once it's over, unfortunately. And number 20 is Reunion. This is one part psychological horror and one part mystery thriller. It's about the tense relationship between a mother and daughter reuniting for the first time in years, and all the exploration of their past. While I found the film to be well acted, and there is a strong sense of suspense built up, the film can also feel incredibly slow, and it's one that I can see people dismiss as boring. It tries to make up for that a bit with this shocking twist ending, but that also didn't fully sit right with me. When you do get down to the film's emotional core, there's something strong there, but even at 95 minutes, it didn't need to be as long as it was. At number 19 is Bombay Rose, a Netflix original that's especially noteworthy for its animation style, with each frame being painted on a computer by 60 artists, and the animation is absolutely stunning, really giving off a beautiful, dreamlike quality. But the reason it's lower on this list is, while the story ultimately works, I didn't find it to be quite as strong as the animation. The characters are likable enough, but because it stays at this somewhat lower energy level in moments where it really shouldn't have, some moments just don't hit as hard emotionally as they should have, and the scene transitions aren't always the smoothest either. Still, it's a nice film, and it's at least worth watching once just to appreciate its gorgeous animation. At number 18 is The Mauritanian. This movie's fine. It's another legal drama about highlighting an unjust system, this time being Guantanamo Bay, though I wouldn't say it does much to really distinguish itself from similar legal dramas. It hits a lot of familiar beats and often plays into tropes we've seen in a number of other movies, but it's still not bad. It's carried heavily by Tahar Rahim and Jodie Foster's performances, who do make this worth watching. It's just nothing I'd say is a must-see. At number 17 is Stay Out of the Attic. This is a Shudder original release that, like a number of their films, goes with this schlocky B-movie vibe, where blood splatters all over the place, and characters experience weird twists and turns, and it was fun for what it was. It would have been a little better, though, had there been a more consistent tone, because most of the film is a little silly, but then it tries to go for some last-minute character development in the final act, which on its own isn't bad, but it also doesn't completely mesh together with the rest of the film. Had they introduced those plot elements a little earlier on and had more time to flesh them out, it would have been great. But the final product's a little messy, though it's still fine for what it is. At number 16 is Moxie. Between this and Amy Poehler's first movie, Wine Country, I like this one a little more, as I felt this had something meaningful to say, but it is tonally jumbled. It goes back and forth between a high school drama focused on traumatizing issues like harassment, and then this inspirational, feel-good, generation-defining tone. And what happens is, it brings up key issues that certainly needed to be addressed, and then moves on from them as quickly as they're brought up. So it feels like it was working off a checklist more than anything. But there is a sincerity to it that I appreciate, and I thought the cast all worked well together, so because of that I did find myself smiling at times. It's just there was potential for so much more here. At number 15 is Boss Level, and anything from here on out I found to be at least good and would wholeheartedly recommend. This is yet another time loop movie, though this time it takes the Groundhog Day concept and combines it with video game influences, though maybe not on the same level as, say, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and it gives us pretty much a mindless, fun action movie. I'll admit right up front, it's a very derivative film, but it still works, mainly for its stylistic action scenes, as well as a fun lead performance by Frank Grillo. I could see some people dismissing it because they're either tired of these time loop movies or because of how bare bones it is, but if you're big into action films, I think there's still enough here that will make for an entertaining experience, for what it is. And number 14 is Lucky, which is, yes, another time loop movie. Somehow, we got two in 1 month, though this one actually operates a little differently. It's not the most straightforward movie, and as the film unearths more information about our main character, you realize it's more metaphorical in nature, and I appreciate how it'll touch upon personal topics through a horror lens. It's not always the most coherent movie, and it's definitely too vague at times, which I feel will leave viewers a little frustrated, but I felt it gave us enough pieces of the puzzle to work with, and there's ultimately a really solid message behind it. Between this and 12-Hour Shift last year, things are looking up for writer Brea Grant, so I'm looking forward to whatever else she has next. At number 13 is Slacks, the Shudder original release about evil genes. Yep. Well, there's a little more to it than that. While this seems like it's going to be this dumb, campy, disposable film, it actually has a little more to say than it lets on. It certainly does play into some of its more obviously ridiculous elements, with some over-the-top scenes of these hands murdering people in bloody fashion, but the film is actually more satirical in nature, and actually is a swipe at things like consumerism and toxic corporate environments. And for that, I can appreciate it, along with its dark humor. It could have gone a step further with its satire, with its short runtime only exploring so much, but I think it was a solid enough film that had something good to say. At number 12 is The Vigil, which was another February holdover. This is a slow-burning horror film that I initially thought was just okay as soon as I finished watching it, but it grew on me the more I thought about it, with its themes of religion giving us both a character study as well as some chilling scenes of meticulously crafted suspense. The pacing is going to throw some people off, but it's got some top-notch sound mixing, stunning direction, and solid acting to make for a well-made horror film. At number 11 is Zack Snyder's Justice League, a movie willed into existence by the fans and is 4 hours of Zack Snyder's original vision of what the Justice League was meant to be. This is one of those movies that's going to depend solely on your personal enjoyment of Snyder as a director, as well as how invested you are in the DCEU. I think we can all agree that this is definitely an improvement over the 2017 theatrical cut, but beyond that, I'd say I had a good time with it, but I'm also not a die-hard Zack Snyder fan. So there were times where I found the movie to be a bit too much, as it was just him doing his usual slow-mo, and it would just drag things out at times. That 4 hours really was a lot, though to be fair, this movie functions partially as fan service, so I know he decided to go all out with this and give everyone who made this possible what they wanted. As for me, I still appreciate it. It's a good movie overall, but I still don't think the DCEU should have done a team-up movie so early on the way they did. But it's still good we got a more complete version of this film. I'm always supportive of creators getting their voices totally heard, and hopefully things will be looking up for the DCEU moving forward. At number 10 is Violation, probably the toughest watch on here, and one that contains elements in film that usually turn me away, which are being too dark and too grim. And that, along with a lot of the content, will be a big reason why not too many people may be able to get through the whole thing. But I thought this was a well-done movie that acts more as a subversion on the revenge genre in a way. It's a film that deals with revenge while also going hand in hand with trauma, and a lot of the horror in this film stems from our lead character trying to cope with that trauma. I think thematically it's very strong, and it has some really morally complex characters, including our protagonist, which is something you don't often see in these sort of films. Though, while it's not a film that tries to shock you for the sake of it, I can also understand how a lot of it can be a turnoff in some ways. At number 9 is White Lie. I thought I was done with the movies from January, but I missed this one, as this got a very quiet release on VOD at the very beginning of the year. This is a film not too many people spoke about, but it deserves much more attention. I'm usually not totally on board with movies that have an outright despicable lead character, which this film has, with our lead character faking a cancer diagnosis, but what makes it work is the subtle approach by the filmmakers to give us an engaging mystery, along with a fantastic lead performance from Casey Roll, and some well-written supporting characters who we can find more sympathy for. I think this is probably going to go down as one of the most overlooked movies of 2021. At number 8 is the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. I'm sure I'm going to get some pushback for this because I know there seems to be a consensus that it's not all that good, and a lot of it stems from the fact that in the third act, we got way too many flashbacks that clearly served as an advertisement for a spin-off show that no one wanted. And I get that. But for me, I still found nearly everything else about the movie to work really well. Is it on the same level as when Steven Hillenburg was on the show? Not at all. But the film can be very funny and very charming, still trying to tap into some of that same energy that made SpongeBob so appealing in the first place, which helped with having former writer of the show, Tim Hill, at the helm. As someone who's long been critical of the show after the first movie, I get where the criticism lies with this one, but it turned out to be a pleasant surprise for me, and I found it really enjoyable. At number 7 is Bad Trip, and I know you must be thinking, how can you include a crude, hidden prank comedy so high? Well, I said this in my review, and I'll say it again. Your love or hatred of this will partially, or mostly, be based on how much you enjoy Eric Andre. Now, I do, and while this isn't as surreal as some of his other efforts, it involves a lot of the same people behind the Eric Andre show, and it's still that same sense of humor. It's weird at times, it's uncomfortable, it's crass, it's gross, but for me, it was just a lot of fun. There's not much else I can say about it. If you don't like him that much to begin with, this won't win you over, but if you're a big fan of his, it's a must-watch for you. At number 6 is Godzilla vs. Kong, which was an absolute blast to watch. It's a film that knows what it is and just tries to have as much fun as possible. It fully delivers on its premise, with the fight scenes between Godzilla and Kong being a ton of fun, especially in the last 30 minutes or so. And surprisingly this time around, the human characters aren't bad either. Still not the deepest characters by any means, but this is a film that isn't looking to be deep. They're just delightful to watch, especially the storyline with Millie Bobby Brown, Brian Tyree Henry, and Julian Dennison. So, all in all, it's a great time. I hope we get more from the Monsterverse if this is the direction they're going to go. It's unknown if that's going to happen, but we'll see. At number 5 is Little Fish, which I'm a little late to as this was released in early February, but I do want to talk about it. Like a number of films from the past year, it's sure to resonate on some level with viewers, as it's also focused on a pandemic where an unknown virus comes out of nowhere and mysteriously affects anyone and everyone. Though instead of it being a virus that can kill people, it causes them to lose their memories, and this is focused on a couple trying to keep their romance going in spite of everything going on. It's not an easy film to get through, but its heartbreaking drama feels incredibly earned, and that's due to some wonderful performances from Olivia Cooke and Jack O'Connell, who are just natural together. While the film has a lot going for it between a strong script, solid direction, and some gorgeous cinematography, it's Cooke and O'Connell who carry this one, and their performances alone make this worth watching. At number 4 is Minari, one of the biggest contenders of the award season. This is a very sweet and delightful movie, and I'll be honest, I wasn't totally sure what this movie was completely about walking into it, even though I was hearing so many great things about it, and it turns out it's less of a story-based film and instead more character-based, focusing on this one family's day-to-day life as they try making it in America. While the scenes of Stephen Yeun as the father were great, it's the relationship between his son David and his mother-in-law Sun Ya that were the highlights for me. These were by far the film's most heartfelt moments, as they relied on some incredible performances. It can be heartbreaking at times, but when these characters do find some success, it really puts a smile on your face, and it resonated heavily with me. At number 3 is Raya and the Last Dragon, the latest film from Walt Disney Animation Studios, and I'm happy to say it's another hit for them. I got a little nervous for a moment because I thought Frozen 2 was a bit underwhelming, so I was hoping we weren't about to sink into another dark age for Disney, but this is definitely a step back in the right direction. Is it one of their best films ever made? No. But then again, you're also dealing with a company who's churned out classic after classic. It does have some of their familiar elements, but I wouldn't call the film predictable. In fact, it's pretty engaging, as we have this deep mythology to explore, and our characters have to travel through all these lands. Plus, it's the closest to a full-on action movie we've seen from their animated films since probably Big Hero 6, and will definitely be some of the moments that adults will be most interested in, while kids will be able to take away a lesson about building trust and strengthening relationships. So for that, it certainly makes this worth a watch. At number 2 is Nobody, the John Wick-like action movie starring the one and only Bob Odenkirk. I know this isn't the most original movie out there, and I get if that rubs some people the wrong way, but I had an absolute blast with this. If Bob Odenkirk were to reinvent himself as an action star, with this being the start of that trend, I'd be totally on board with that. What this film lacks in originality, it makes up for in a non-stop barrage of creative, well-choreographed action scenes, all done in a tone that doesn't take itself too seriously. This is such a good time, and one that I'd say definitely seek out. But at number 1 is The Father, a movie that lived up to all of my expectations. I'm someone who loves a lot of genre movies, from horror to action to sci-fi, but I'm also always a sucker for a really well-made, emotional, character-driven drama, and that's what we got here. Anthony Hopkins gives one of his finest performances of all time. I think it's his best in Silence of the Lambs, to be honest, as he shows us a man in this deteriorating state, trying to maintain some sort of control over his life, and stories change on him. People seemingly take on new appearances and with different actors playing them, and it's all absolutely heartbreaking. I know this has been said by a number of people already, but if you've had a family member experiencing something similar, this will especially hit hard for you. And it's one of the best movies I've seen this year so far. It's a powerhouse of a movie, and one that I couldn't recommend enough. And that's a wrap on March. We're a quarter of the way through it this year, somehow. 2020 felt like it went by for an eternity, while this is already whizzing right by. We're slowly starting to get some big releases here and there, though we're not totally there yet, but if there are no further delays for the rest of the year, it looks like we'll have a lot to look forward to. But let me know though, what was your favorite movie in March? Was it anything I listed here? Was it something I left off? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.